What's up? Today, I have a meeting with my co-supervisor. Today's Wednesday, yeah? So I actually just want to meet up with him to know what's my next step forward. Because at this point, I've submitted my first draft of the proposal to my supervisor, Prof T. Right, but I'm not going to get any feedback up until he comes back because he's in Austria. He just be randomly popping up all over the world, to talk about dynamics and whatnot, right? So as it stands, I'm gonna start off at the gym. Then I'm gonna go to campus. See what happens there. Hopefully you didn't forget the meeting. So we got to discussing the method that I thought about of the objective detection algorithm. Okay, so first of all, I think I need to explain what that is. So in atmospheric sciences, you essentially looking at a whole lot of data. I mean, the data that we use dates back almost up until 1979. Given that, and you start thinking of all the number of weather systems that have occurred since that point, quite a lot. To manually, I mean, when I say manually, I mean like to look at those things like event for event would take a very, very long time. So what we do is that we use objective detection algorithms, of which allow us to essentially create a systematic algorithm in order to identify them using characteristics of these of these weather systems that we are well aware of. Like you look for close circulation, you look for a cold core, you look for a geopotential minimum and whatnot. Okay. So that's all well and fair. However, this particular variation of the one that I'm trying to find has not necessarily been done before. So I thought of a way of detecting this particular variation of this weather system, and I drafted it to my co-supervisor, and he liked it. He liked the idea, and then he said he had thought of a number of other ways of doing this thing, right? And some of which he knows to work. But he said that I should go forward and go with the method that I thought of, and then come back to him in about a month maybe, just to show him some results. Yeah, I think the next thing to do is just to implement this detection algorithm. Something that I've never done before actually. But I've never done like object and feature tracking and whatnot, so that's gonna be a whole new learning experience that I'm gonna have to open myself up to. But he did say that the actual implementation of the algorithm is not that difficult. Then again, when someone that smart tells you something is not difficult, can you really even trust it? I don't know. I don't think so. I think the most difficult thing for me is actually capturing like content on campus. Because one thing about me is that I'm a professional or a farmer in public. So to just be out here having my phone out in public like this, very unbecoming of me. I don't talk to anybody at all, so just to be out here doing stuff like this is rather insane for me. Right. And also I always need to be aware of who everybody is, so I find it very difficult to just lock in on the camera alone. But I think it's one of those things that I'll get used to as time goes along. And yeah, people are leaving from going to or leaving their classes now because it's becoming rather full. But yeah, I'm about to head home soon and start with the algorithm. Whew, yeah. Okay. So I have started, right? And I have something to work with. I want to explain exactly what it is that I want to do so that you can have like a run, like so that as my progress goes along, you'll be able to like kind of follow my train of thought, as this thing goes along. Right. So I think that kind of forces me to kind of give you like a brief explanation of what a cutoff, what a cutoff flow is. Yeah. So in meteorology, right, we make, okay, let me say, particularly when we're looking at synoptic scale weather systems. So I think when I say synoptic scale weather systems, I'm saying anything from essentially the width of South Africa, a length scale that is as wide as South Africa. So the weather system that I'm looking at has countrywide effects. So when we look at those length scales, um, particularly when we want to investigate them, we make use of what is called reanalysis data. That we live in a three-dimensional world, right? Of which we live in the X, Y, Z plane, of which is east, west, north, south, up, down, right? But then in meteorology, we also consider a fourth dimension, of which is time, because we have the understanding that things can change locally. You see, so for instance, like it might be warm now here, but it will be cold later. That's maybe because cold air is moving over into the area. Given that, we make use of reanalysis data, of which is four-dimensional data. Well, I guess technically maybe five-dimensional data, but we look at the variable itself as a function of these four variables, you see, as opposed to looking at the variable itself as the fifth dimension. But that's mathematical semantics and whatnot. Ask a mathematician, maybe they'll tell you otherwise. But we look at meteorological variables, like such as temperature, as a function of four dimensions, which is space and time. A cutoff law looks something like this, right? It has its lowest pressure here at the center, right? What you'll notice is that you have these sort of like closed loops, of which signify a closed circulation, because the air goes something like this, clockwise around this low pressure minimum. And so I'm at the first step where I'm trying to detect these closed circulations over here. I wanna find these. Even though the fields themselves might be continuous, the data itself is not. So meteorological data comes in the form of a grid, right? So you can imagine, like, maybe here is a observation, here's an observation, or like a reading. So let's say 30 degrees, 32 degrees, 34 degrees. So you can think of every point or every vertex of this grid as an observation. You have this gridded data, so you need to find a way of filling in the gaps so that you get a continuous field. And so that's when you employ some sort of like interpolation technique, of which is pretty much saying like, okay, given the data points that we have here, fill in these gaps so that you have like a continuous field like this, right? And for the most part, Python or MATLAB, whatever, does that for you. It interpolates for you. The point that I am is that I'm still trying to find these closed circulations. So that's what I'm trying to detect. So the code that I typed up has to find these closed circulations. And yeah, that's the first step. So let's run it. Yeah, let's see what's happening. Bro, what? Okay, so I've tried to run the code a couple of times, and it keeps on leaving interactive mode, which pretty much means that the code is crashing. So a lot of the time, you get syntax error, and then you get like a logical error. Syntax error you can fix, yeah, because then it tells you what the problem is. But when your code does something like just leave interactive mode like that, it tells you that there's an error hidden in this nightmare that you need to figure out, and it's not always obvious. So that's gonna be fun trying to figure out literally the first step. I think I've made this video like long enough already now. Hopefully next upload, the code, the error will be fixed. As it stands, I don't know what's happening. I don't know at all. I've tried to run it about a couple of times now, thinking I've even tried to restart my PC. Yeah, same thing. So you'll see in the next video. Deuces.